Welcome back to Flekar, the place where headlines turn into firestorms, where drama unfolds one truth at a time. If you thought 2025 was winding down quietly, think again. Because what started as a routine morning interview quickly turned into a national spectacle. It was supposed to be a 10-minute sit-down on Good Morning America between John Kennedy and George Stephanopoulos. But by the time the cameras stopped rolling, John Kennedy had been escorted off set, the control room was in chaos, and millions of viewers were left with one question: what the hell just happened? Let's rewind. It was Tuesday, August 5, 2025, a date that would go down as one of the most controversial mornings in live television history. The guest list at Good Morning America was unusually political that day. John Kennedy, the outspoken senator from Louisiana and a firebrand figure in American politics, had agreed to appear for a segment titled Crossing the Aisle, Finding Unity in 2025. Ironically, unity was the last thing anyone would witness. The tension had already begun behind the scenes. Producers in the control room whispered nervously as Kennedy's team arrived. There had been no agreement on pre-screened questions. Kennedy had refused to approve any topics in advance, stating clearly, "If George wants to dance, I'll bring the fire." It was a warning no one took seriously until it was too late. George Stephanopoulos, veteran anchor and former White House communications director, had reportedly requested the interview himself. Insiders say he was eager to challenge Kennedy on recent comments the senator made about the federal judiciary, climate legislation, and a controversial education bill that had polarized much of the nation. 8:04 a.m. The lights dimmed. The music swelled. The camera panned. And with that signature Good Morning America smile, George looked into the lens and said, "Joining us now is Senator John Kennedy, here to discuss where the country's headed and how we get there together." But almost instantly, the temperature in the room dropped. Kennedy, wearing his signature thick-rimmed glasses and a smirk that spelled trouble, leaned forward and answered the first question with a jab. "Well, George, it's nice to be here on what used to be a news program before it turned into a morning circus." Cue the silence. George chuckled, at first brushing it off with a grin. "I think our viewers would say we still do some serious journalism around here." Kennedy didn't flinch. Not when it comes to facts. Not when it comes to the truth. The battle lines were drawn. George pivoted quickly to policy, trying to regain control of the interview. "Senator, last week you said, and I quote, that the current administration's energy plan is a love letter to the Chinese Communist Party. Do you stand by that statement?" Kennedy's answer came sharp. "Absolutely. Because when you shut down American drilling and outsource lithium mining to Xinjiang, you're not going green, you're going red." George interjected. "That's a serious accusation without credible evidence." Kennedy cut him off. "No, George, what's serious is how folks like you defend this administration like it's your college roommate. You used to advise presidents, now you just babysit narratives." A visible shift occurred. George's face tightened. "Senator, I've worked in journalism for over 20 years. You don't get to come on here and insult this platform just because you don't like hard questions." But Kennedy wasn't backing down. "You want hard questions? Ask yourself why no one in the media covered the whistleblower testimony last month. Ask why nobody's talking about the fentanyl crisis ripping through our towns. You folks are too busy talking about TikTok filters and celebrity breakups." What followed was a rapid-fire exchange that didn't feel like an interview, it felt like a courtroom cross-examination, with no judge to call order. Producers in the control room scrambled. A junior assistant reportedly held up a sign that read "Rap," but no one moved. Ratings were spiking in real time. The viewership counter on the screen jumped by the thousands every minute. Twitter, or X, as it's now called, exploded with live reactions. Hashtags like #Kennedy vs. George and #GMAChaos began trending globally. Then came the final straw. George asked, "Do you believe the 2024 election was fair?" The studio held its breath. Kennedy narrowed his eyes. "Define fair, George. You want to talk about fairness? Let's talk about ballot harvesting, tech censorship, and intelligence agencies interfering with laptop stories before elections." Let's talk about how the game's rigged before the first vote is cast. George leaned forward. So that's a no? You're denying the legitimacy of a democratic election? That's when Kennedy stood up. Live. On air. He looked straight into the camera. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who helped spin talking points for a president who bombed 5 countries before lunch. George tried to maintain composure. Senator, please. But Kennedy wasn't done. You're not a journalist, George. You're a gatekeeper in a collapsing empire, trying to silence anyone who doesn't worship your narrative. What happened next was caught on every smartphone in the studio. A producer whispered into George's earpiece. A floor manager stepped onto the set. A voice over the intercom said, "We need to cut the feed." The screen abruptly faded to commercial. But the damage was done. Within 10 minutes, clips of the clash flooded social media. News outlets across the spectrum jumped in. Conservative platforms praised Kennedy as a truth-teller who finally confronted the media elite. Liberal commentators condemned the outburst as an assault on journalism and democracy. ABC released a statement 2 hours later. Today's interview with Senator John Kennedy did not go as planned. While we support robust dialogue, personal attacks and misinformation have no place on our platform. Kennedy responded on his own terms. From the steps of Capitol Hill that same afternoon, flanked by supporters and press microphones, he declared, "The American people are tired of polished lies and cowardly coverage." What happened this morning wasn't chaos, it was clarity. The incident sparked a wave of commentary across television, podcasts, and online panels. Some called for George Stephanopoulos to apologize for allowing the segment to spiral. Others demanded Kennedy be